Alright, and welcome back. Today we're going to be doing things a little bit differently. I had intended to do the tutorial video today, but due to work constraints I wasn't able to get to it quite as quickly as I had hoped, and I seem to be encountering an issue, a pesky little error that I can't seem to get rid of. While the actual code works just fine, the C# code does throw an error when launching the application. As you can see, the projectiles are shot out by the enemy and throw at the player. So we're going to be coming back to this next week, and I'll obviously have fixed the error by then. But for now, I didn't want to leave you all hanging, so I figured I'd show off a little bit of what's been going on over in Hermit. My brother has been coming in and helping out a little bit with the camera system, as though he is very much enjoying the project. He wanted to help out, and he knew that he didn't like the camera system as it stood, so he's been modifying that a little bit. As you can see, the camera is a little bit more freeform. You can just hold down the right mouse button to move around. And when you mouse over objects, the yellow circle now expands to fill whatever object you have selected. It's actually pretty impressive how exactly precise it is based off of the size of the object that it's snapping to. But for now, this is where this is. Now let me hop over to what I've been working on, which is the alchemy side of things. So with the alchemy, I don't want to go over too much details. We obviously have a lot of elements here, and we have data that is in each element that I don't want to go over for spoiler reasons. But you can see here we have a elemental mix of a lot of different elements for the entirety of a brewing process. So this would assume that somebody threw in a lot of different elements into the same batch to brew it. And if we iterate through this, we can see how it steps forward, and the elements are consuming, creating, and interacting with one another, a lot like how chemical elements in real life interact with one another when you put them together. Sometimes they're destroyed, sometimes they're created, sometimes they merge into create a new element. And sometimes one element absorbs another, or they both turn into something that is mostly inert. So if we go ahead and iterate all the way through this one, this particular mix, if we go for 10 seconds of brewing, comes out to 7.222 for element of osmotic concentration, which is obviously a very placeholdery name. And you'll notice that there is a loss there. Some of the actual elements have been lost, the percentages here. And this is intentional. There is steam, there is waste. You lose elements the longer you cook. And so as a result, there is an intended purpose of not cooking as long as you can. If we actually go back to the original and we sit here and look, Humes actually reach their peak around 3, which these are obviously all placeholder numbers, but around 3 concentration, Humes reach their peak. And then they start to decrease back down, because whatever elements were being consumed to feed Hume levels have been destroyed, and now other elements are being fed by the Humes in this reaction. So obviously the Humes will decrease and is no longer viable. But if Humes were what you were looking for this particular alchemical reaction, you would have wanted to stop back there. And so that would allow the player to have a sort of agency in the alchemical reactions. Now, each one of these elements will be associated with various effects. And for now, I'm not going to obviously disclose any of those effects or how they are associated with the elements. For now, it's easy to understand that there is a lot of randomization. So if we do a stress test here, we do 1,000 different alchemical reactions, and these are all just procedurally generated alchemical batches of various elements. Then you can see what the more common and what the least common elements are, based off of how many come back, with that being the primary element remaining in the batch after 100 iterations. So that'd be 10 seconds of brewing. Obviously, some of these numbers need to be tweaked and worked, and how much elements you're actually allowed to put into a pod at one time needs to be play tested and figured out how that feels. And then, of course, how much the player has agency over that will be determined based off of the tools they have available to them. So pre-processing to manipulate what elements go into it, pulling out certain elements out of certain ingredients, or putting in certain elements perhaps, and then post-processing with how you distill those elements down to possibly remove just the last little bit of certain elements you don't want. So that's kind of how the alchemical system will work. And next time you see Hermit, we're probably going to be showing you something a little bit more visual, a little bit more in-game, actual boiling and interacting with the alchemical system. Probably not pre-processing or post-processing, probably just putting various mushrooms into a pot and cooking it, and then cutting it off at a certain point and seeing what the end result actually affects. We'll be coming back to that, but that'll probably be 2 or 3 weeks from now. For now, thank you all, and I hope you all have a wonderful day, and I'll see you all next week.